Greg Chillak from 90 Day Fiancé has done the unexpected as he managed to gather the money for Joan Kruchov's steep dowry. Living in Long Island, New York, with his mom, Lucille, Greg welcomed Joan after her move from Ghana. His ultimate dream is to open his own bakery, but for now, Greg has been working as a plumber to save money. Greg hoped to move out and begin a new life with Joan as soon as possible. Despite financial struggles and family pressure, his determination helped him achieve what once seemed nearly impossible. Joan encouraged her husband to start earning so they could eventually have a place of their own. However, she also came across as ungrateful towards Greg's mom, Lucille, who had generously given them a place to stay. Joan made unnecessary comments about Lucille, suggesting she should leave the house more often to give the couple some privacy. Her remarks clearly hurt Lucille, who had been trying to support them. Despite the tension, Lucille still went out of her way to do something she believed would make both Greg and Joan happy, showing grace in a difficult situation. Greg is clearly not in the best financial position, and his unemployment only adds to the strain. He currently lives with his mother and does not contribute to the rent. On top of that, he's now responsible for covering the costs of the wedding, Joan's dress, and various cultural customs. Joan received a call from her family asking about Greg. She said he was mostly great, though she admitted to feeling a little frustrated at times. Later, she sat down with Greg to discuss the dowry. Surprised, he questioned how realistic it was for him to afford 15 cows. Joan firmly stated that in her culture, it was customary for a man to pay a dowry, often worth 15 cows. She pointed out that Greg couldn't afford such a dowry because he didn't have a job. Greg, frustrated, argued that it was unfair for him to cover all the expenses, including the dowry, especially given his financial struggles. Joan dismissed his concerns, simply saying, "Culture is culture." The conversation grew tense as they confronted the reality of Greg's unemployment. Many fans commented that Greg should have considered these cultural expectations before bringing Joan to the United States. In episode 15, Greg was planning to surprise Joan with his costume. He revealed he had paid off the dowry so they could actually get married now. He spoke about how he was going to show up in a cow costume to surprise Joan. He shared how Joan had been asking him about the dowry every day, about whether he had paid it. Greg spoke about the dowry involving 15 cows at $200 a pop, which made the total dowry worth $3,000. "Fortunately, my mom and dad paid for the wedding." Greg revealed that his parents were now going to foot his wedding expenses. It had freed up a lot of Greg's budget, and he could now pay Joan's bride price through his savings. He felt like a huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Greg was glad that they could now finally have Joan's family's blessings and truly begin having a happy marriage. "I'm proud of you that you paid the dowry." Joan was shocked when Greg told her he had paid the dowry. It took her a minute to process the information, but when she did, Joan couldn't stop smiling. She told Greg she was really proud of him. In Joan's culture, fathers usually set dowries for their daughters, so her father decided her dowry before he died. Since Greg had finally paid the dowry, he had shown respect towards her culture, her family, and her father's last wishes. Joan loved Greg for his gesture and was thankful for what he had done. Joan originally planned to save money by having the wedding at home instead of booking a venue. However, Lucille took them to see a venue offering a full wedding package, including an open bar and food, for $8,900. She said she wanted her son to have the experience of a lifetime. Lucille suggested Greg contribute just $1,000, while she and Greg's father, her ex-husband, would cover the rest. "You know that's what families do, they give," she told Greg and his fiancé. Lucille's offer seemed to ease the pressure on the couple and brought some excitement back to the 90 Day Fiancé wedding planning. However, now that Joan knew Lucille and Greg's father were willing to help financially, she may have started wondering if Greg could ask them for help renting an apartment in New York City. Joan had expressed clear gratitude to Greg's parents and seemed hopeful about building a future with him outside of Lucille's home. But in the very next episode of 90 Day Fiancé, tensions rose when Lucille stopped Joan from seeing her own wedding dress.